Rain hammered against the windows of the tiny convenience store in downtown Portland, Oregon, as Owen Tate counted the day's meager earnings. $47.32, not enough to cover even half of tomorrow's supply order. He rubbed his tired eyes, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like dying insects. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday in November, and he should have closed 13 minutes ago. That's when he heard it, a desperate pounding on the glass door. Bang! 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 Owen looked up to see a young woman collapsed against his storefront, her silk dress plastered to her body by the rain, mascara streaming down her face in black rivers. Her bare feet were bleeding on the concrete. She looked up at him with eyes that held the kind of terror Owen had only seen once before, 15 years ago, in a mirror. "Please," she mouthed through the glass. "Please, help me." Every instinct told Owen to walk away, to pretend he didn't see her. Rich people brought trouble, and this woman, despite the rain and the tears, was clearly rich. The torn dress was Valentino. The diamond earrings catching the streetlight were real. Everything about her screamed wealth and danger. But Owen had made himself a promise long ago. He would never turn away someone who truly needed help, not after the night when everyone had turned away from him. He unlocked the door. Before we dive deeper into this story of unexpected connection and the secrets that bind us, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you believe that one act of kindness can change everything, hit that subscribe button. Stories like Owen's, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, deserve to be told, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The woman practically fell through the doorway, and Owen caught her before she hit the ground. She was shaking violently, her skin ice cold despite the late autumn temperature. Up close, he could see the bruises forming on her wrists, the raw panic in her green eyes. "Lock the door," she whispered urgently. "Please, lock it now." Owen hesitated for only a second before turning the deadbolt. Through the rain-streaked window, he saw a black Mercedes slow down at the intersection, its windows tinted dark as midnight. The car idled there for a moment, then drove on. "Are you hurt?" Owen asked, guiding her to the plastic chair behind his counter. "Should I call the police?" "No!" The word came out sharp and terrified. "No police! Please, they'll find me if you call the police." Owen grabbed the emergency blanket he kept under the register, the one he'd bought after spending that first winter sleeping in his car, and wrapped it around her shoulders. She clutched it like a lifeline, her whole body trembling. "I'm Owen," he said gently, crouching down to her eye level. "You're safe here. Nobody's going to hurt you. But I need to know, are you in immediate danger?" The woman looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether she could trust this stranger in a threadbare flannel shirt and jeans worn thin at the knees. Something in Owen's eyes must have convinced her, because she started to cry again, softer this time. "My name is Autumn Kingsley, and I just escaped from my own engagement party." Owen's hand froze halfway to the first aid kit. Autumn Kingsley? Even someone who lived as disconnected from high society as Owen knew that name. The Kingsley family owned half of the Pacific Northwest's real estate, 3 major tech companies, and had enough political influence to make senators return their calls within the hour. "The Kingsley?" Owen asked, his voice carefully neutral. "As in Kingsley Enterprises?" Autumn nodded miserably. "My father is Preston Kingsley, and the man I was supposed to marry tonight—" She stopped, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "He's a monster!" Owen stood up and locked the second deadbolt, the one he'd installed after the third robbery attempt. Then he pulled down the security shutters, something he only did when he sensed real trouble. The metal rattled as it descended, sealing them inside the small store. "Tell me everything," he said. And she did. Autumn's story poured out in broken fragments, like shattered glass catching the light. She was 26 years old, the only child of Preston Kingsley, and had spent her entire life being groomed to take over the family empire. But 3 months ago, her father made an announcement that shattered her world. She was to marry Nathaniel Grayson, the son of his oldest business partner. The merger wasn't just corporate, it was personal, 2 dynasties becoming one, cementing power that would be unshakable for generations. "I tried to refuse," Autumn said, her voice hollow. "I told my father I didn't love Nathaniel, that I barely knew him, but he said love was irrelevant. This was about legacy, about family duty." Owen listened, handing her a bottle of water and a package of cookies, the expensive kind he could barely afford to stock, but kept anyway because they sold well. Autumn took them with trembling hands, not seeming to notice that she was eating gas station food wrapped in a stranger's emergency blanket. Tonight was the engagement party, 500 guests at the Kingsley estate in Lake Oswego, everyone who mattered in Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco. Champagne that cost more per bottle than most people make in a month. "What happened?" Owen asked softly. Autumn's face went pale, her hands clenching around the water bottle so hard it crackled. "I went upstairs to get away from it all, just for a moment. I heard voices in my father's study. The door was cracked open. I should have walked away, but I heard my name." She took a shaky breath. "Nathaniel was in there with my father and 2 other men I didn't recognize. They were talking about me like I was a chess piece. Nathaniel said, and I quote, 'Once we're married, I'll have full access to her trust fund. The prenup won't matter. She'll sign whatever I want her to sign.'" Owen's jaw tightened. He'd seen this before, in a different form. People with money who saw other people as assets to be acquired and exploited. "One of the other men asked what would happen if I refused to cooperate," Autumn continued, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Nathaniel laughed. He said accidents happen all the time, that women as fragile as me sometimes have unfortunate falls, that depression runs in families, and suicide is always tragic but understandable." The fluorescent light buzzed louder in the silence that followed. "He was planning to kill you," Owen said flatly, "after taking everything you have." "My father didn't say a word," Autumn said, and the betrayal in her voice cut deeper than any knife. "He just nodded and asked if they needed to adjust the timeline, like they were discussing a business acquisition, not my life." She looked up at Owen, her green eyes reflecting the harsh store lighting. "I ran. I didn't even think about it. I just ran. I made it out through the servants' entrance, but they saw me. They chased me in that car. I've been running for almost 2 hours, and then I saw your light. You were the first open door I found." Owen processed this information with the calm he'd learned from years of surviving on the edge. "They'll be looking for you. They have money, resources, probably private investigators." "I know," Autumn whispered. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come here. I'm putting you in danger." Owen surprised himself by laughing, a short, bitter sound. "Lady, I've been in danger since I was 17 years old. At least this time I'm choosing it." He pulled out his phone, an old model that barely held a charge anymore. "We need to get you somewhere safe, but not anywhere obvious. Do you have any friends? Anyone they wouldn't think to look?" Autumn shook her head. "Everyone I know is connected to my father somehow. Their parents work for him, or they're business associates, or they're on the payroll. I have no one I can trust." "Then you'll stay here tonight," Owen said decisively. "I have a small apartment upstairs. It's not much, but it's warm and dry, and nobody knows it exists. The building record's listed as storage space." "I can't ask you to do that," Autumn protested. "You don't even know me." "You're not asking," Owen replied. "I'm offering. And you're right, I don't know you, but I know what it looks like when someone is running for their life, and I know what it feels like when the whole world is against you. So tonight, you're not alone." For the first time since she'd collapsed against his door, Autumn smiled. It was small and fragile, but it was real. "Why are you helping me?" Owen was quiet for a moment, memories flickering behind his eyes like old film reels. "Because 15 years ago, I was the one pounding on doors at midnight, and everyone locked theirs." If you're still watching, you're about to discover secrets that will change everything you thought you knew about this story. Before we continue, if you believe that true kindness means helping those who can't help you back, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you would do in Owen's situation, and make sure you're subscribed because what happens next will leave you absolutely speechless. Now let's find out what Owen is hiding and why helping Autumn might be the most dangerous decision he's ever made. Owen led Autumn through the back door of the store, past the storage room with its carefully organized shelves, and up a narrow staircase that creaked with every step. The door at the top opened into what might generously be called an efficiency apartment. One room, maybe 300 square feet, with a kitchenette, a bathroom barely large enough to turn around in, and a mattress on the floor covered with worn but clean sheets. "It's not the Kingsley estate," Owen said with a dry smile. Autumn looked around the sparse space. A hot plate sat on the counter next to a single pot and pan. The closet door hung open, revealing exactly 4 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, and 1 suit that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. There were no photographs on the walls, no decorations, nothing personal except for a stack of library books on the floor and a laptop that had seen better days. "It's perfect," Autumn said, and meant it. "It's the first place I felt safe in months." Owen grabbed a clean t-shirt and sweatpants from his closet. "Bathroom's through there. Hot water takes a minute to kick in, but it works. I'll make some tea." While Autumn showered, Owen stood at the small window, looking out at the rain-soaked streets of downtown Portland. His reflection stared back at him, a 32-year-old man who looked 40, with dark circles under his eyes and hands permanently stained from years of manual labor. He'd come so far from who he used to be, and yet here he was, making the same kind of choice that had destroyed his life the first time. The bathroom door opened, and Autumn emerged wearing his clothes, her long dark hair wrapped in a towel. Without the expensive dress and makeup, she looked younger, more vulnerable, and somehow more real. "Thank you," Autumn said softly, "for everything." Owen handed her a chipped mug filled with chamomile tea. "You should sleep. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do next." "I can't sleep," Autumn said, sinking down to sit on the floor with her back against the wall. "Every time I close my eyes, I see Nathaniel's face when he was talking about killing me. He smiled, Owen. He smiled." Owen sat across from her, his own mug warming his hands. They sat in silence for a moment, 2 strangers connected by circumstance and desperation. "Can I ask you something?" Autumn said finally. "Earlier, you said 15 years ago you were the one knocking on doors. What happened?" Owen took a long drink of his tea, buying time to decide how much to tell her. Then he figured, what the hell? She'd trusted him with her darkest secret. He owed her the same. 15 years ago, Owen began, I wasn't Owen Tate, struggling shopkeeper in Portland, Oregon. I was Owen Tate, investment banker at Meridian Financial in Boston, Massachusetts. I had a corner office, a 6-figure salary, and a future that looked unlimited. Autumn's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't interrupt. I was assigned to a major merger deal, 2 pharmaceutical companies joining forces. My job was to analyze the financials, make sure everything was legitimate, and that's when I found it, hidden in the layers of paperwork, buried under shell companies and offshore accounts. They were inflating drug prices on life-saving medications by 300%. Cancer drugs, insulin, heart medication. People were dying because they couldn't afford their prescriptions, and these companies were making record profits. His hands tightened to ground the mug. I went to my supervisor, showed him everything. He told me to bury it, said it wasn't our concern, that our job was to facilitate the merger, not to play moral police. I refused. I said I'd go to the SEC, to the media, to anyone who would listen. What did they do? Autumn asked, though something in her voice suggested she already knew. They destroyed me, Owen said simply. Within a week, I was fired for cause. They planted evidence in my computer showing I'd been embezzling from client accounts. Suddenly, I wasn't a whistleblower, I was a thief. The SEC investigation cleared me eventually, but by then my reputation was ruined. No firm would touch me. My fiancé left, my family stopped taking my calls. I lost my apartment, my car, everything. He looked up at Autumn, his dark eyes holding a lifetime of hard-won wisdom. I ended up in Portland by accident, working whatever jobs I could find. Construction, restaurants, janitorial work. 5 years ago, this building's owner died, and his daughter was selling it cheap. I'd saved just enough for the down payment, opened the convenience store because it was the only business I could afford. "And you've been here ever since?" Autumn said softly. "And I've been here ever since," Owen confirmed, "living in this room, working 18-hour days, barely making enough to keep the lights on. But I'm free. I answer to no one but myself, and I can sleep at night knowing I did the right thing, even if it cost me everything." Autumn was quiet for a long moment. "I've never done the right thing," she said finally. "Not really. I've always done what my father wanted, what was expected of me. I went to the right schools, made the right connections, smiled at the right parties. I've been a puppet my entire life." "You ran tonight," Owen pointed out. "That took courage." "That took fear," Autumn corrected. "I don't know what courage looks like." Owen smiled slightly. "Courage looks like staying, like figuring out what to do next instead of just surviving, like fighting back." "How do I fight back against Preston Kingsley?" Autumn asked, and the helplessness in her voice was heartbreaking. "He owns everything. He controls everyone. I have nothing." "You have the truth," Owen said, "and you have me. I know it's not much, but I've learned a few things about fighting powerful people who think they're untouchable." Autumn looked at him across the small room, this stranger who had opened his door at midnight, who had nothing but was offering everything. "Why are you really doing this, Owen? What do you get out of helping me?" Owen was silent for so long that Autumn thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, quietly, 15 years ago, someone could have helped me. Someone with power, someone with resources, someone who saw what was happening and chose to look away. Maybe if one person had stood up for me, my life would be different, but they didn't. And I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to be that person for someone else, I would take it, no matter the cost. Tears welled up in Autumn's eyes again, but this time they weren't from fear. "I don't deserve this." "Nobody deserves to be terrorized by the people who are supposed to love them," Owen replied, "and everyone deserves a chance to fight back." They stayed up until 3 in the morning, planning. Owen's years of financial analysis hadn't completely left him, and Autumn's insider knowledge of her father's business operations was extensive. Together, they began to piece together a strategy. "The engagement was supposed to be finalized tomorrow," Autumn said. "My father will realize I'm serious about running, not just having cold feet. He'll mobilize everything to find me." "Then we need to move faster than he expects," Owen said. He opened his laptop, the screen flickering to life. "You said your trust fund is the target? What are the terms?" "I gain full access when I turn 27 or when I marry, whichever comes first. It's worth $200 million, but there's a clause. If I'm deemed mentally unfit or if I die before accessing it, everything goes to the family foundation, which my father controls." Owen's mind worked through the implications. "So if you disappear, he can have you declared mentally incompetent. If you die, he controls the money anyway. But if you publicly refuse the marriage and claim the trust on your own terms, he loses leverage," Autumn finished. "But I'm not 27 yet. I have 3 months to go." 3 months of staying hidden, alive, and sane, while gathering evidence of his criminal conspiracy, because threatening your life and planning insurance fraud, that's federal. "You really think we can do this? Take down Preston Kingsley?" Owen looked at her steadily. "I think we have to try, because if we don't, you'll spend the rest of your life running, or you won't have a life at all." As dawn broke over Portland, painting the sky in shades of gray and gold, Autumn finally fell asleep on Owen's mattress. Owen sat by the window watching the city wake up and wondered what he'd gotten himself into. His phone buzzed with a text from his supplier. The weekly delivery was due, and Owen was $300 short. He looked at Autumn, sleeping peacefully for the first time in months, and made a decision. He'd skip the delivery. They could make do with what was in stock. Her life was worth more than his business. 3 days passed in careful routine. Owen opened the store each morning, leaving Autumn hidden upstairs with strict instructions not to make any noise. She spent the hours researching her father's business dealings on Owen's laptop, digging through public records and news articles, finding the cracks in the empire's foundation. At night, they worked together, mapping out connections and transactions. Autumn had access to information that Owen never could have obtained, and Owen's financial expertise helped them make sense of the complex web of corruption. "Look at this," Autumn said, pointing to her laptop screen. 3 years ago, Kingsley Enterprises acquired a construction company in Seattle. The company was failing, worth maybe $5 million. My father paid $50 million. Owen leaned in to look. "Money laundering?" "That's what I thought, but look at the timing." Autumn pulled up another document. 2 weeks later, the Seattle City Council approved a major rezoning initiative. Suddenly, that construction company owned land that was worth $300 million. And guess who was on the City Council committee that pushed through the approval? Owen's eyes widened as he saw the name. Theodore Grayson, Nathaniel's father. "They've been doing this for years," Autumn said, her voice shaking with anger. "Insider trading, bribery, fraud, and it's all documented. They were so confident no one would ever look, they barely even tried to hide it." "This is enough," Owen said. "This is enough to bring them down, but we need to get it to the right people, someone who can't be bought." That's when they heard it, footsteps on the stairs outside. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Owen moved fast, grabbing Autumn and pulling her into the tiny bathroom. "Don't make a sound," he whispered, "no matter what happens." The door to the apartment exploded inward, the cheap lock shattering like glass. 3 men entered, and Owen recognized the type immediately. Private security, the kind that wealthy people hired when they needed problems solved quietly. The lead man was tall, built like a linebacker, with cold eyes that swept the small apartment professionally. "Mr. Tate, we know she's here. Make this easy on yourself." Owen stood his ground, blocking the bathroom door with his body. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence," the man said. "We've been watching you for 3 days. We know Autumn Kingsley is in this apartment. Mr. Kingsley is willing to compensate you generously for her safe return. $50,000, cash, right now." Owen's heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. "And if I refuse?" The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then we take her anyway, and you learn what happens to people who interfere in family matters." "She doesn't want to go back," Owen said. "She's an adult. She has the right to make her own choices." "She's mentally unstable," the man replied, "running from her own engagement party, making wild accusations about her family. Her father is very concerned. He just wants to get her the help she needs." It was smoothly done, Owen had to admit. They'd already built the narrative. If Autumn fought back, she'd be branded as crazy. If she went public, no one would believe her. "I need to see proof," Owen said, stalling for time. "Proof that Preston Kingsley sent you." The man pulled out his phone and made a call. A moment later, Preston Kingsley's voice filled the small apartment, coming through a speaker. "Mr. Tate, Preston said, and Owen heard the barely concealed fury beneath the polite tone. "You have something that belongs to me. I'm offering you a small fortune to return it. I suggest you accept." "She's not an it," Owen said quietly. "She's a human being." "She's my daughter," Preston snapped, "and you're a nobody shopkeeper who's way over his head. Take the money and walk away. This is your only warning." Owen looked at the three men in his apartment, at the shattered door, at the phone showing Preston Kingsley's name. He thought about the $50,000, about how that money would save his store, would give him security for the first time in 15 years. Then he thought about Autumn, hiding in his bathroom, terrified and alone. He thought about the promise he'd made to himself, and about the man he'd sworn never to become. "No," Owen said simply. The lead man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Wrong answer. What happened next happened fast. The man moved towards Owen, and Owen did something he hadn't done since his brief stint as a bouncer in his early days in Portland. He fought back. Owen wasn't a fighter by nature, but desperation and righteousness made him fierce. He caught the first man with a solid punch to the jaw, surprising him, but the other two were on him in seconds, and Owen knew he was outmatched. They dragged him to the floor, and through the ringing in his ears, Owen heard the bathroom door open. "Stop!" Autumn's voice cut through the chaos. "Stop hurting him!" She stood in the bathroom doorway, Owen's laptop clutched to her chest, her face pale but determined. "I'll go with you," she said. "Just don't hurt him any more." "No!" Owen gasped from the floor. "Autumn, don't!" "I'm sorry, Owen," and her eyes told him that she meant it, "but I won't let them kill you for helping me." The lead man pulled Owen to his feet, blood running from his split lip. "Smart girl. Your father will be pleased." "I have one condition," Autumn said, and her voice was stronger now. "You let Owen go. You don't touch him. You don't go after his business. You leave him completely alone. Promise me." The man looked amused. "You're not in a position to make demands." "Promise me," Autumn repeated, "or I'll start screaming and bring every neighbor in this building running. I'll tell them you're kidnapping me. You'll have to drag me out in front of witnesses. Is that what Preston Kingsley wants? Public attention?" The man's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine. The shopkeeper gets a pass, as long as he stays smart and keeps his mouth shut." They left, Autumn walking between the two guards while the lead man gave Owen one final warning look. Owen stumbled to the window and watched them load Autumn into a black SUV. Just before the door closed, Autumn looked up at his window. And she winked. Owen's hand flew to his pocket, the USB drive that Autumn had been using to back up all their research. She'd slipped it to him in the chaos, pressing it into his hand when the guards weren't looking. She'd planned this. She'd sacrificed herself to make sure the evidence stayed safe. Owen's mind raced. He had maybe 6 hours before they got Autumn somewhere secure, before they could control her completely. 6 hours to do what needed to be done. He grabbed his phone and started making calls. First, to the one lawyer in Portland he knew who couldn't be bought, a legal aid attorney named Rebecca Frost, who'd helped him with his store permits. Then to the one journalist who'd actually published the truth about his case 15 years ago, even when it cost her professionally. By the time the sun rose, Owen had assembled a team. It wasn't much. A lawyer, a journalist, a forensic accountant who owed Owen a favor, and a private investigator who specialized in corporate corruption. They weren't powerful, but they were honest, and right now that mattered more. "We have 6 hours of research, financial records, and a witness willing to testify," Owen told them, spreading the evidence across his store's counter. "We need to move fast before they can silence Autumn permanently." Rebecca Frost, a sharp woman in her 40s with gray-streaked hair and fierce eyes, looked through the documents. "This is federal corruption, wire fraud, bribery, conspiracy. If we can prove even half of this—" "We need to get Autumn somewhere safe first," Owen said. "They took her to the Kingsley estate. It's like a fortress." The private investigator, a wiry man named Jack Pemberton, pulled up blueprints on his tablet. Not a fortress, just a very expensive house with very expensive security, which means it has the same weaknesses as any house: service entrances, delivery schedules, guard rotations. You're talking about breaking in, Rebecca said flatly. That's illegal. So is kidnapping. So is conspiracy to commit murder. I'm not asking any of you to break the law, but I'm going in, with or without help. The journalist, Maya Rodriguez, a woman in her 30s who'd won awards for her investigative work, smiled. I'm not saying I'm encouraging illegal activity, but if someone were to hypothetically retrieve a kidnapping victim while I happened to be nearby with a camera and several witnesses, well, that would be quite a story. Jack grinned. And if someone needed technical support with security systems, purely in a theoretical sense, I might know a guy. Owen looked at this ragtag group of allies, these people who had nothing to gain and everything to lose, and felt something he hadn't in 15 years. Hope. Then let's go get her back, he said. The Kingsley estate sat on 40 acres of prime real estate in Lake Otsego, a suburb south of Portland where houses started at $2 million and climbed from there. Preston Kingsley's mansion was the crown jewel, a sprawling modern structure of glass and steel that made architectural magazines swoon and neighbors whisper about property taxes. Owen approached in a borrowed catering van, part of a legitimate delivery for an event happening at a neighbor's house. Jack had worked his magic, and suddenly Owen was on the schedule, complete with uniform and legitimate identification. He parked 3 houses down and walked through the carefully manicured landscapes, moving with the purposeful stride of someone who belonged there. The evening was settling in, and lights blazed from the Kingsley mansion's windows. Through his earpiece, Jack's voice guided him. 2 guards at the main gate, 3 roaming the property. Service entrance on the east side should be clear for 30 seconds starting now. Owen moved fast, slipping through a gate and into the service area where deliveries were received. Inside, the mansion was even more impressive. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost more than Owen would make in several lifetimes. He made his way through the service corridors, following the layout Jack had provided. Autumn would be in the east wing, in what used to be her childhood bedroom. They'd put her somewhere familiar, somewhere that would remind her that this was her home, her family, her place. Owen found the room easily. It was locked from the outside. He picked the lock, a skill he'd learned during his worst days in Portland, when sometimes the difference between a place to sleep and the streets was a simple deadbolt. The door swung open silently. Autumn sat on the edge of a bed that probably cost more than his car, still wearing his t-shirt and sweatpants, her face composed but her eyes alert. When she saw Owen, her expression shifted from surprise to something that looked almost like joy. "You came," she whispered. "Did you think I wouldn't?" Owen replied, moving quickly into the room. "We need to go, now." "They're going to have me committed tomorrow," Autumn said, standing up. "My father has a doctor ready to sign papers saying I'm mentally unstable. Once that happens, I lose everything." "That's not going to happen," Owen said. "We have the evidence and we have people ready to publish it. But first, we need to get you out of here." They made it halfway down the corridor when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed, and Owen heard the sound of running feet. They'd been detected. Preston Kingsley's voice boomed over an intercom system, calm and cold. "Owen Tate, you're trespassing on private property and attempting to kidnap my daughter. I've called the police. If you leave now, I'll consider not pressing charges." Owen and Autumn kept moving, but guards appeared at both ends of the corridor, blocking their escape. They were trapped. "It's over," Preston Kingsley said, stepping into view at the far end of the hallway. He was exactly what Owen expected: mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suit, and eyes like chips of ice. "Autumn, come here. We'll get you the help you need." "I don't need help," Autumn said, her voice ringing clear and strong. "I need you to stop trying to control my life." "You're not thinking clearly," Preston said in the tone of a patient father dealing with a troubled child. "Running away, making accusations, hiding with this person. It's clear you're having a breakdown." "The only thing that's clear," a new voice rang out, "is that you're going to prison." Maya Rodriguez stepped into view, camera rolling, with Rebecca Frost beside her holding what was clearly a legal document. Behind them were 3 federal agents, badges displayed. Preston Kingsley, the lead agent said, "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, bribery, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. You have the right to silence." Owen watched as they put Preston Kingsley in handcuffs as his empire began to crumble in real time. The man who seemed untouchable was suddenly very touchable indeed. Autumn walked past her father without looking at him, moving to stand beside Owen. Together they watched as the federal agents led Preston away. "How? How did you make this happen so fast?" asked Autumn. Rebecca smiled. "We didn't. This investigation has been ongoing for 6 months. The FBI has been building a case against Kingsley Enterprises. We just provided the final pieces of evidence they needed and a victim willing to testify. The journalist who covered my case 15 years ago," Owen explained to Autumn, "she'd never stopped investigating. When I called her yesterday, she'd already been working with the FBI. We just gave them what they needed to move immediately." Nathaniel Grayson was arrested an hour later at his apartment in downtown Seattle. His father, Theodore, tried to flee to his yacht, but was picked up by the Coast Guard before he cleared the harbor. Over the next week, 17 more people were arrested as the full scope of the conspiracy unraveled. The media had a field day. "Billionaire Heiress exposes father's criminal empire," read one headline. "Convenience store owner saves Kingsley daughter," read another. Owen's store became briefly famous, with news crews camped outside and customers lining up to meet the hero Shopkeeper. Owen hated every second of the attention. 2 months later, Owen stood in his store at midnight, just like he had the night Autumn first knocked on his door. But everything had changed. The store was thriving, supplied and stocked properly for the first time in years. The arrests had caused a surge in business as curiosity seekers and supporters alike came to shop at the place where the story began. The door opened and Autumn walked in. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked nothing like the rain-soaked, terrified woman who'd collapsed on his doorstep, and everything like the strong person she'd always been underneath. "I've been thinking," she said without preamble, "about what to do with my trust fund now that I can finally access it." "You don't owe me anything," Owen said immediately. "I know. That's not what this is about. I want to start a foundation to help people who've been crushed by corporate corruption, whistleblowers who lost everything for telling the truth, people like you were 15 years ago." Owen looked at her carefully. "That's a good idea. You should do it." "I want to do it with you," Autumn said, "as partners. I have the resources and the knowledge of how these systems work. You have the experience and the understanding of what people actually need. Together, we could help hundreds of people rebuild their lives." "Autumn," Owen said slowly, "I run a convenience store. I'm not qualified to run a foundation." "You rebuilt your entire life from nothing," Autumn countered. "You faced down my father's security team with nothing but courage and stubbornness. You assembled a team and executed a rescue operation in less than 6 hours. You're more qualified than you think." Owen was quiet for a moment, then asked the question that had been bothering him since that night. "Why did you really come to my door? There were other places, other stores. Why mine?" Autumn smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "When I was running, terrified and alone, I passed 6 different stores. All of them had their lights on. But when I looked through your window, I saw you counting money at the register, and you looked sad, tired, like someone who understood what it meant to lose everything. I didn't want someone rich or powerful. I wanted someone who would understand." "And I did," Owen said. "You did," Autumn agreed. "So what do you say? Partners?" Owen thought about his small apartment upstairs, about the years he'd spent barely surviving, about the promise he'd made to himself to help others if he ever had the chance. He thought about the man he used to be and the man he'd become. "Partners," he said, extending his hand. Autumn shook it, her grip firm and sure. "The Tate Kingsley Foundation for Justice. How does that sound?" "It sounds like trouble," Owen replied with a slight smile. "The best kind." 6 months after that night in the rain, the foundation opened its doors in downtown Portland, Oregon, not in some gleaming high-rise, but in a renovated warehouse that had once been abandoned. The space was designed to be welcoming, not intimidating. Comfortable chairs, warm lighting, and people who actually listened. Owen kept his convenience store. He worked there 4 days a week and at the foundation 3 days a week. Autumn threw herself into the work with the same intensity she'd once directed at her father's business empire, but now with purpose that filled her rather than drained her. They helped 47 people in the first year alone. Whistleblowers who'd lost their jobs, families destroyed by corporate negligence, workers who'd been silenced by non-disclosure agreements and fear. Each person who walked through their doors received not just money, but support, legal help, and most importantly, the knowledge that someone believed them. The store became a community hub in ways Owen never imagined. People came not just for milk and bread, but to talk, to share their stories, to find hope. Owen hired 2 employees, both people the foundation had helped, giving them a second chance just as he had been given. One evening, as Owen was closing up the store, a teenage girl approached the door. She was soaked from the rain, her clothes cheap and worn, her backpack held together with duct tape. She knocked hesitantly on the glass. Owen recognized that look, that desperation mixed with hope, mixed with fear that someone would turn her away. He opened the door. "I'm sorry," the girl said, her voice shaking. "I know you're closed, but I saw your light, and I didn't know where else to go. My stepdad, I need help." Owen stepped aside. "Come in. You're safe here." As the girl entered, Autumn appeared from the back room where she'd been helping Owen with inventory. She took one look at the situation and immediately grabbed the emergency blanket from under the counter. "What's your name?" Autumn asked gently, wrapping the blanket around the girl's shoulders. "Zoe," the girl whispered. "Zoe, I'm Autumn, and this is Owen. Whatever you're running from, whatever happened, you're safe now. Let's get you warm and dry, and then we'll figure out how to help you." Owen caught Autumn's eye over Zoe's head, and they shared a look of perfect understanding. This was why they did it. Not for the recognition, not for the satisfaction of bringing down corrupt billionaires, but for moments like this, for the chance to be the open door that someone desperately needed. Later that night, after they'd gotten Zoe safely to a shelter and connected her with social services and a lawyer who would help her file charges against her abusive stepfather, Owen and Autumn sat in his store drinking coffee. "Do you ever regret it?" Autumn asked. "Opening that door for me? Your life would be simpler if you hadn't." Owen considered the question seriously. His life was definitely more complicated now. He had responsibilities, people depending on him, a foundation to help run. But he also had purpose. He had Autumn's friendship, something he valued more than he could articulate. He had the gratitude of dozens of people they'd helped. He had nights like tonight, when they'd saved someone who needed saving. "No," he said finally. "I don't regret it. Not for a second." "Good," Autumn said, smiling, "because I have another idea for the foundation. There's this pattern I've been noticing in tech companies, how they exploit their contract workers." Owen laughed. "Always working, aren't you?" "I learned from the best, a certain shopkeeper who works 18-hour days and never complains." "I complain, I just do it quietly." They sat in comfortable silence, 2 people from completely different worlds who had found common ground in the most unlikely circumstances. Outside, Portland's rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean, and somewhere in the city, someone else was probably facing their darkest moment, wondering if anyone would help them. But in this small store, with its flickering fluorescent lights and worn linoleum floors, hope lived. Because Owen Tate had learned a truth that the wealthy and powerful often forgot, that the most valuable thing you could offer another human being wasn't money or status or connections. It was simply opening your door when they knocked. The story of Owen Tate and Autumn Kingsley reminds us that heroism isn't about grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though sometimes it involves both. Real heroism is about the small choice to help, to believe, to stand with someone when the whole world stands against them. It's about the door you open when it would be easier, safer, more convenient to keep it locked. Owen could have turned Autumn away that rainy night. He had every reason to. He was barely surviving himself. He knew the danger of helping someone so connected to wealth and power. He had learned the hard way what happened when you got involved in things bigger than yourself. But he opened the door anyway, and in doing so, he saved not just Autumn's life, but his own. Because living isn't just about surviving, it's about having a reason to survive. It's about knowing that your existence matters, that your choices count, that one person standing up can change everything. The foundation they built together has now helped over 300 people. Whistleblowers have found justice, families have been reunited, workers have received compensation for years of exploitation. And it all started because a poor shopkeeper looked at a crying woman on his doorstep and chose compassion over convenience. We live in a world that often tells us to look away, to mind our own business, to protect ourselves first. But Owen's story teaches us something different. It teaches us that sometimes the person knocking on your door at midnight isn't an inconvenience or a problem to be avoided. Sometimes they're an opportunity to be the person you wish someone had been for you. What would you do if Autumn appeared at your door tonight? Would you open it, knowing the danger it might bring? Or would you look away, telling yourself it wasn't your problem? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that one act of courage can ripple out in ways we can never fully predict, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that there are still people in this world who choose kindness over safety, compassion over convenience. Because Owen Tate proves that you don't need to be rich to be generous, you don't need to be powerful to be brave, and you don't need to have everything to give something that matters. All you need is the courage to open your door. Thank you for watching. Remember, the next person who needs help might be knocking on your door. Will you answer?